I know we had a comment in as well there, like asking should Joe Canning retire, which is a very, very interesting question here, and I'm sure we'll go into it in detail. He went off yesterday. It was an awful hit. He probably couldn't have ran into a worse person, and that was in his own teammate, and Joe Cooley, one of the biggest, strongest fellas on the field. Thankfully, there was no neck injury or anything like that. It just seems like he was concussed, and obviously badly concussed at the time. But what do you think? What do you think now? Like his body of work, and we went through it a few weeks ago when we compared him with Seamus Callan. His body of work throughout his career is absolutely phenomenal. But do you think he'll stay on with Galway next year and over the next couple of years?
Yeah, well, he's just turned 32 years of age recently, and there's a few players like that in that age bracket. Patrick Horgan, you wouldn't be talking about him retiring, you wouldn't be talking about Seamus Callan retiring. Even TJ Reid just turned 33, you wouldn't be talking about him retiring. An awful lot of these lads are still carrying their team, and if you look at the placed balls, both frees and sideline cuts yesterday, Joe Canning, in an awful lot of ways, carried Galway too. But the flip side is, you could see, like he could be carrying an injury at the moment that we don't know about, but he doesn't look like he's moving as freely as he normally would. And it was a tough night for him, and same with Aaron Gillan as well. I believe they were both held overnight in hospital for observation, and it was a concussion for Canning, but I think he's okay. But you just don't know what these guys are carrying, and he doesn't seem to me like he's moving as freely as he was. So if you look at the last number of years, obviously, I didn't think he should have been Hurler of the Year in 2017. So this isn't like some people seem to think I have some sort of an issue with him, but I don't. I didn't think he was Hurler of the Year in 2017, but he made some huge plays that obviously they wouldn't have won the All-Ireland without that. But you could say that for several players. 2018, I thought he was in Hurler of the Year form. So this is the whole thing. He was definitely in Hurler of the Year form there. 2019, up until he got injured against Waterford in the league semi-final when he hurt his groin, I thought he was in Hurler of the Year form. This year, he looked at the start in the league when we watched that game down at the Gaelic grounds against Limerick. Both thought he was good, but now in the Leinster campaign there, and in the All-Ireland series as well, 2 out of the 4 games he's held scoreless from play, which isn't really kind of how he plays. He had a tough time yesterday before he went off injured. Wasn't involved in the game from open play at all. Again, brilliant from the place balls against Tipperary. Barry Heffernan won that. Won a couple of great puckouts against Wexford in the second half, but didn't have his greatest game. And Kilkenny as well. He scored 3 points, I think, but from play otherwise, he just doesn't look like he's moving around like himself. He's not barreling through the centre and soloing as he was. He's almost getting rid of the ball as quick as he gets his hands on it, with a couple of exceptions. There's always going to be upset, but it's just on
that chain as well. I think that's everyone's greatest fear. When you start striking the ball very, very quickly, it's like when you start getting blocked down or you start getting hooked, it's almost like that's a signal of you slowing down. So maybe that was one of the reasons why he struck the ball an awful lot quicker. Now, he's been doing that probably for the last 2 or 3 years, but definitely it was even more noticeable this year. No, he was blocked underneath the Cusick at one stage, maybe twice actually, and even with the Gerard Hegarty incident as well. It's probably a mental kind of a thing as well. You would worry about that. It's a big thing when you start getting hooked and blocked.
Yeah, and if you're going to play with 5 in the forward line, and Davy Burke is struggling to reach the pace, and then Joe Canning isn't the pace merchant these days, and twisting and turning is going to be tough for him as well. We talked about this with the Tipperary team as well, that some of the lads look laboured out in the field there. And then Conor Cooney isn't making any impact either. It's going to be very hard to get a lad who doesn't look 100% himself at the moment to get into it. And I think you have to look at the injury toll in the recent couple of years. And this is why, the comment came in asking, should Joe Canning retire? And you look at the injury sort of history in recent years, and he's always had a few different injuries. But 2016 against Tipperary, tore the hamstring off the bone in that All-Ireland semi-final going off before half-time. 2017, he got surgery on a knee injury. 2019, tore a groin adductor off the bone against Waterford, that league semi-final. 2020, earlier in the year, had a hand injury, no big deal. But 2020, again, yesterday, against Limerick, gets the concussion. And he's done a couple of interviews in recent years talking about the injuries, and those 2 tears on his left side that I talked about, both the hamstring off the bone and the groin adductor. And he said just in October, so that's all my left leg, and I have a lot of imbalances, I suppose, throughout my body. It's like, if you break a hurl and fix it back together, yeah, it's fixed, but is it the same? No, it's not. So I don't think anybody is 100% in coming back from injury, especially at my age. I'm not a 21 or 22-year-old. I'm plus 10 of that. So when you get into it, it's a lot harder to recover after sessions. And I did an interview, a one-on-one interview with him in 2018 before the championship. And I was saying to him, what did he expect from the next 5 years, we'll say, give or take, playing with Galway? I think he was 29 going on 30 at that stage, and he goes, I don't know. I remember only last year I got a knee injury from the Leinster final, and I didn't really train too often between that and even the All-Ireland. I got an operation there before Christmas, and the surgeon said to me if I was 19 again, he'd probably give me a full knee. But because of my age, he did a job on me that might give me another couple of years, hopefully, so who knows. I'm taking this year as it comes, and to be straight about it, having come through the serious hamstring injury 2 years ago and then the knee injury last year, I'm taking it game by game. I'm just praying my body lets me hurl as long as I can. That's the honest truth. And you can certainly see a situation whereby Joe Canning plays next year and does very well for Galway. It's just in this game yesterday against such a physical team as Limerick, you can notice that the Limerick lads are kind of marching out with the ball, and a couple of times he ends up getting treatment twice, once having to get taken off. And I thought it looked like it was very difficult out there for him. And again, I can see him coming back next year and maybe clear up whatever injuries he has to some degree and playing well in a certain amount of games. But maybe against the Limerick again, it might be tough again. So what do you think? I'm not looking to retire the man here at all. I can see him coming back and having a really good role, and the new season starts so soon. But what are your thoughts on it? That's just kind of a bit of background information, not just a blithe little comment of, retired again.
I think against 90 to 95% of opposition, he can still do serious damage, both from play and from placed balls. But as you said, when the game has gone it's so much based around mobility and speed now, and like what you were saying there about Galway were playing obviously 5 forwards against 6. Generally, you're going to need 5 Duracell bunnies that are going to be able to run around and take on defenders and win frees and things like that. Joe's definitely probably not that type of player anymore, but we've said this before, and it's a big thing for me. When a guy can put over line balls, when a guy can put over frees, and when a guy can dictate a game from place balls, I still think careers can go on much longer. Like at club level, he could play well into his 40s if he wanted to, because he's still going to be able to do that. Barry Heffernan probably beat him in their duel from play against when they played Tipperary, but yet he was still that calm and influence down the home stretch from place balls. They might need to look at like putting him somewhere different. Like, would it be if they were playing orthodox and they put him back in full forward again, and kind of, maybe that's where he started, maybe that's where he finished as well. They moved him out around centre forward obviously in 2017 under Micheál Donoghue and ended up winning the All-Ireland. They might need to look at playing him, maybe putting him somewhere else as well. I don't think there's no way Joe Canning will go out with a whimper like yesterday would have been. Saying that, if Galway had won the All-Ireland this year, would he have retired? Possibly, because I think he'd love to go out in his own terms. He'd obviously love to go out successful as well. But he's definitely obviously towards the latter stage, but I definitely think he'll come back next year. I wouldn't be that surprised if next year was his final year though, because I think he's smart enough as well, and it is a fear for players, particularly when you get a bit older. Even chatting to older lads in my own club, you don't want to, in horse racing terms, you don't want to be leaving time to go when you're actually over the top, if you know what I mean. And not that being disingenuous. You want to go when you're still playing at really high level. JJ Delaney's probably the classic example of that. He left while he was still wanted, and Joe or no one else will want it to be said that he hung around too long or he should have retired or anything like that. But I definitely think after the events of yesterday, hopefully, obviously, we're all hoping that the concussion is not serious and that he'll be able to get back, training over the coming months. But I definitely expect him to be back for 2021.
Do you think Shane O'Neill will be looking to revamp the team, or will he want to still build the forward line around Joe Canning, who did play full forward for about half of that first half, but again, there was the spare man back there, so it's going to be tough. Now, he lost a couple of 50-50 balls. Sean Finn won one of them off him anyway. But the point is, do you think Shane O'Neill still wants to build a forward line around him?
I don't think at that age profile that you should be building a forward line probably around a fella who has had a lot of injuries and potentially could have more injuries. I think be more probably if he's thinking long term, you're thinking Conor Whelan, Brian Concannon, especially guys that showed up really, really well yesterday. Concannon in particular, like when things were going badly, I thought he was absolutely outstanding and played in a different type of a role yesterday. Wasn't inside that much yesterday at all. Played out a lot more, and that's the type of energy you probably need against Limerick out in half Ireland. You need this guy who's going to take on guys the whole time. So I think if O'Neill is building a forward line around anyone, it would probably be those two guys at this stage, and he'll take a fit Canning and absolutely maximise him. But I don't think he'd be building a forward line around him at this stage.
Yeah, and like the thing is, Shane, like it'll be Joe Canning's decision and no one else's. I don't think that Shane O'Neill, like even if he decided, I mean we're not trying to second guess him, but if he decided that I might just start introducing a lot of younger players and move out more than one of those particular players, like he might look at a few of those and say maybe that's not the way forward. I think like you couldn't make a case for dropping him as a manager because like he can still do the magical things he did yesterday, and just optically if things go wrong and you've kind of made the decision to kind of cast him aside, you're in serious bother. It's like an extreme version of what Liam Cahill did this year when he decided that he wanted to move forward without Noel Connors and Maurice Shanahan. That would have been thrown in his face if he didn't do as well as he's done. People would be saying, what are you doing? A bit like Derek McGrath a few years ago as well, when he culled an awful lot of experienced players. So it's certainly not a decision that Shane O'Neill really has control of. So it's all about Joe Canning, and like, does his body do what he needs him to do to kick back the way he can?